What about China? Do you think that China is a concern, and do you think that it will cause a repercussion across the region? Will it be contagious?
As far as China is concerned, the stock market was basically, we had a boom, then we had a bust. And the market was cheap for like 6 or 7 years. So it was natural that at some point, people got excited. What the problem was is that happened in 1 year, the market was up 150%. And what's unique about China is that let's take a country like the US, after the Great Depression, it took about 35 years before the US hit. So the prior peak was here, it collapsed, and it took 35 years before the US came back to the prior peak. Take a look at Thailand. The prior peak was January in 1994. The stock market fell, bounced back. Now we're 21 years away and we're still not back to the prior peak. But China went from its prior peak down and back up to its prior peak in a 10-year span. I think what's happening in China is very specific to China. There's no other market in Asia that's gone up 150% in a year like that. So on the one hand, from an investment perspective, we look at China and say, it's hard to invest there. You can't buy China A shares. But here's one chance, one time that's good. Because foreign investment really couldn't have a lot of exposure to China A shares. Yeah, sure, there's the Hong Kong, Shanghai Connect and stuff, but this is tiny. The China A shares market is massive, and foreign investment really can't be in it. So what went up and came down really didn't have a whole lot to do with what's going on around all of Asia. So I think that from a market contagion perspective, yes, it damages markets, but these other markets have not suffered and probably will not suffer what China is going through right now to the same extent. So let's think of it simply. A person can't pay their mortgage, so they default to the bank. That's where it stops across all of Asia. But in America, the bank then was able to offload that risk onto the government. Now the government has a massive debt, massive. And it couldn't be done in many countries in Asia like that. And why did they do it? Because the banks convinced the government and the people, we're too big to fail. So I was a bank analyst for my first 10 years in the industry, and I think it's just a lie. It's a lie perpetuated by the banks. So they perpetuate that lie, and then the government takes on the debt in different ways, complicated ways that they take it on. But in the end, they have a huge amount of debt. Now they have to pay interest on that debt. By keeping the interest rate super, super low, you've certainly pushed up the stock market. So you've created a bit of a bubble in the US stock market. And then what you've also done is you've made your interest costs super, super low on your government debt. If the government was to double, triple, quadruple, bring up the interest rate to normal levels, it would cause such a debt burden on the US government that they couldn't bear it. So this is the reason why the US government can't increase the interest rate by much. Basically what it means is workers are moving from farms into factories, and that drives GDP dramatically. It drives exceptionally high GDP because the salaries and the income that's generated at the factories is much higher than on the farm. And the second thing that happens is that basic infrastructure means, you go to China, you go to any of these countries that have been emerging for a while, you go back 20 years, there was no buildings on that main road. Now there's 10, 20, 30 buildings in a line. There's highways, there's all this stuff. So a country will go through 10, 15, 20 years of this basic infrastructure investment. And so, in China, people look at the Chinese GDP and they say, investment's falling, and therefore people should start consuming more. Well, investment's falling because the basic infrastructure investment has been done. China will never grow as fast as it did in the past, just like we can see from other countries that went through development phases like that. So to expect China, first of all, to grow at an exceptionally high rate like that doesn't make sense. But the second thing is then to try to tell Chinese people and government that you need more consumer spending. You need to lend to consumers so that they can buy more. Well, that's the American bankrupt the consumer model. I don't agree with that, and I don't think that that's good advice.